They say blood never lies, but what if the first lie you ever heard came from the man who gave you that blood? Every child grows up believing their father is a hero. But what happens when the hero you worship turns out to be the villain in your story? For years, he taught his son about loyalty, honor, and family words that sounded like sacred vows. The boy believed him. He built his whole identity around those lessons. But one truth can destroy everything you once believed in, and that truth was hidden deep beneath a father's smile. Trust is the most fragile bond between a father and a son, yet it feels unbreakable until it's shattered. The son grew up believing every word his father said, seeing him as a man of strength, wisdom, and honor. He believed that the lessons of loyalty and truth were sacred, passed down like a family legacy. But behind the father's proud smile and gentle tone, there lived a darker truth, one built on lies, carefully woven to protect his own sins. The illusion of trust became the foundation of their relationship, a false comfort that blinded the son from the betrayal hidden in plain sight. When that illusion finally cracked, the world around him changed forever. He realized that trust is not given, it's earned, and once broken, it can never return to its purest form. The betrayal didn't just destroy their bond, it destroyed his faith in love, in family, in everything that once gave his life meaning. The pain of realizing his father's deception burned deeper than any wound. It wasn't just about lies, it was about years stolen, emotions manipulated, and loyalty exploited. The son began to see moments from his childhood differently. Every kind word, every smile, every gesture of affection now felt poisoned by deceit. The father had played his role perfectly, the protector, the mentor, the man who stood for what was right while secretly crafting the downfall of his own blood. That realization haunted the son more than anger ever could. It hollowed him out, leaving behind only a quiet resolve. In the silence of his heartbreak, something inside him changed. The innocence that once made him believe in people died the moment he learned the truth. He didn't cry, he didn't scream. He simply stopped trusting anyone. That was the birth of something darker, not hatred, but a cold sense of clarity. He began to see that trust can be a weapon, and in the wrong hands, it's deadlier than any blade. Now, the son carries that lesson like a scar visible only to him. He knows that betrayal doesn't begin when someone lies, it begins when you trust the wrong person. And in his case, that person was the one he was born to love. The illusion of trust had been his greatest weakness, but in breaking it, his father unknowingly created something far more dangerous, a son who would never again be blinded by love, mercy, or hope. The night the truth came to light, it didn't arrive with thunder or warning, it crept in quietly, like a whisper that refused to be ignored. The son stumbled upon pieces of the past his father had buried, fragments of secrets that no one was ever meant to find. A letter, a photograph, a voice message, small things that carried the weight of destruction. Each clue led him closer to the truth until it finally stood before him, raw and undeniable. His father, the man he admired more than anyone, had betrayed not only his family but the very essence of what he claimed to stand for. The betrayal was not a single act, it was a chain of choices, each one darker than the last. It began with greed, hidden under the mask of responsibility. Then came the lies, smooth, convincing, and repeated so often that they became a part of daily life. The son realized that the tragedy that took his loved one's life wasn't fate's cruelty, but the outcome of his father's deceit. The discovery crushed him because it wasn't a stranger who destroyed their peace. It was the man who was supposed to protect it. When the son confronted the truth, he didn't feel anger right away, he felt disbelief. His mind refused to accept that the person he trusted most was capable of such darkness. But denial slowly turned to pain, and pain into rage. He began to see how everything fit together, how every smile, every reassurance from his father had been a way to cover his sins. The betrayal was no longer just a secret, it was a wound that tore through everything the son had believed in. As he stood in the shadow of that truth, the world around him lost its color. The house that once felt warm now felt haunted. The father's voice, once comforting, now echoed like a lie that couldn't die. The son's heart hardened, not because he wanted revenge yet, but because love no longer had a place to live. The discovery didn't just reveal who his father really was, it revealed who the son was about to become. That night marked the end of innocence. The son understood that betrayal doesn't just break families, it rewrites destinies. The discovery burned a truth into his soul. Sometimes the greatest enemy is not outside the family, but within it. And from that moment on, he carried that fire quietly, knowing that the man who gave him life had also given him a reason to destroy everything he once called home. Silence can be louder than any scream, especially when it's born from betrayal. After discovering the truth, the son didn't lash out or confront his father immediately. He withdrew, letting the weight of what he knew settle into his bones. Every word he didn't speak became a weapon sharpening in the dark. People mistook his calm for weakness, his silence for defeat, but beneath that stillness, a storm was forming. He learned that revenge wasn't something to rush, it was something to craft, slowly, deliberately, with patience that could bleed years. In those quiet days, he studied his father's every move. He watched how the man who destroyed his world carried on as if nothing had happened. The son noticed every small arrogance, every careless smile, every sign that his father believed he'd buried his sins for good. That arrogance became the son's fuel. The silence gave him power because it hid his intentions and made his father comfortable, too comfortable. He began to understand that true revenge doesn't need noise, it thrives in shadows. He stopped seeking comfort or sympathy. The world didn't need to know his pain. His father didn't deserve to see it. He turned his sorrow into focus and his heartbreak into patience. Each day that passed without a word from him was a day closer to the reckoning. He realized that silence terrifies the guilty more than threats do, because silence makes them wonder what's coming and when. And in that uncertainty, fear grows like a slow poison. The son's silence was not absence, it was preparation. He built himself quietly, piece by piece, stronger and colder than before. He learned how to control his emotions, how to hide his thoughts behind a calm face. He became the very thing his father couldn't predict: a reflection without expression, a shadow without mercy. His silence wasn't surrender, it was transformation. By the time his father began to sense that something was wrong, it was already too late. The silence had done its work. It had turned a wounded son into a strategist, a victim into an avenger. In that stillness, revenge was no longer an act of rage. It had become a destiny written in patience. The son had learned the art of waiting, and he knew that when silence finally broke, it would not speak in words, but in justice. The turning point came when the father finally realized that the son he once molded was no longer the same. The years of deception, the carefully hidden lies, and the mask of honor had begun to crumble. The son had seen everything and changed in ways his father could never undo. There was no confrontation, no dramatic confession, just a cold distance that spoke louder than any argument ever could. The father, for the first time, felt the weight of his own actions pressing against him. He had created a man who could look him in the eye without love, without hate, only with the emptiness of truth. As days passed, the balance of power quietly shifted. The son no longer sought approval or guidance. The man he once admired had become a ghost alive, yet stripped of all respect and meaning. The father began to see reflections of himself in his son, but it was not pride he felt, it was fear. The son had inherited not the values his father preached, but the ruthlessness he practiced. Every lesson the father once taught about loyalty, about strength, about protecting what's yours came back, twisted and redefined, now serving a new purpose. The son had become everything his father claimed to be, but without the hypocrisy. He acted with precision, not passion. He confronted situations not with anger but with strategy. It was as if the father's sins had been reborn in his own blood, sharper, colder, and impossible to control. The turning point was not a moment of revenge. It was the quiet realization that the father had built the very thing that would one day destroy him. The father tried to make amends, but guilt cannot undo years of deceit. His apologies fell on deaf ears because they came too late. Like rain after the fire has already turned everything to ash. The son didn't reject forgiveness. He simply had no use for it anymore. The bond between them had burned beyond repair, and what remained was a hollow connection tied only by blood. It wasn't hatred that defined their relationship, now it was indifference, and that cut deeper than anger ever could. In that silence between them, both men understood the truth. The father had spent years building his legacy, only to watch it collapse under the weight of his own betrayal. The son stood before him, not as a boy seeking justice, but as a mirror reflecting everything the father had tried to hide. That was the true punishment, to see his own sins staring back at him through his son's eyes, knowing that the legacy he left behind was not of love, but of destruction. Revenge has a way of lingering long after the act itself is done. For the son, when everything finally fell apart, he expected to feel satisfaction, the kind that comes when justice is finally served. But instead, he felt nothing. The silence that once gave him power now echoed with emptiness. The father had paid the price for his betrayal, but in destroying him, the son had also destroyed the last piece of himself that could feel peace. The legacy of revenge didn't bring closure. It brought a new kind of loneliness, one that even vengeance couldn't silence. As time passed, the son began to see how revenge doesn't end with victory, it continues through consequences. Every choice he made in pursuit of justice came back to haunt him in unexpected ways. Relationships crumbled, trust vanished, and the warmth of family became something he could only remember, not feel. He realized that while his father's betrayal had started the fire, his own revenge had kept it burning. Both men had become architects of their own ruin, each shaping the other's downfall. People spoke of what happened as if it were fate, a tragic story passed down in whispers. The son became a living reminder of what vengeance truly costs, not just to those who deserve it, but to those who seek it. His life turned into a mirror of his father's, powerful on the outside, broken on the inside. The family name, once carried with pride, now carried the weight of 2 generations' sins. Revenge had given him justice, but it had also stolen everything that could make justice matter. In his quiet moments, he would think about how things might have been different if he had chosen forgiveness. But forgiveness felt like weakness, and pride refused to let him reach for it. The more he tried to move forward, the more he realized that revenge doesn't end when your enemy falls, it ends when you stop being consumed by it. And that, he learned too late, was the hardest battle of all. The legacy of revenge became his inheritance, carved deeper than blood, stronger than love. It wasn't written in words or stories, it lived in silence, in the emptiness that followed every victory. His father's betrayal may have started the fire, but his own revenge ensured it would never die. And as years passed, the son finally understood the truth, that vengeance may bring justice, but it never brings peace, because when you fight monsters long enough, you risk becoming one yourself. A father's betrayal may be hidden in silence, but a son's revenge echoes through generations. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.